man returns from death with a shocking message that would change his life forever. Israel del Toro's story begins not with the fire and chaos of the battlefield, but with the quiet resolve of a boy who faced one of life's most devastating moments far too young. At just 12 years old, Israel stood at his father's bedside, grappling with the impending loss of the man who had been his hero, protector, and guide. His father's death would leave a gaping void not only in Israel's life, but in the lives of his entire family. As his father's life ebbed away, he looked into Israel's tearful eyes and asked one thing of him: to take care of the family. This wasn't just a fleeting moment of grief. It became a defining one. The promise to his father shaped Israel in ways that only a child carrying such a heavy burden could understand. To Israel, this was not a mere request, but a sacred obligation. In the years that followed, that promise transformed into the foundation of his character, guiding his every decision and fortifying him against life's adversities. Growing up, Israel knew what it meant to struggle. His family's life was far from easy. They faced financial difficulties, and the absence of his father cast a long shadow over their home. As the eldest son, Israel took his father's words to heart, stepping into a role that demanded maturity beyond his years. He supported his siblings, helped his mother, and took on responsibilities that other kids his age couldn't begin to fathom. But Israel didn't just shoulder this burden. He embraced it with a fierce determination that would later define his adult life. Despite the odds stacked against him, Israel excelled in school. He saw education not just as a path to personal success, but as a means to honor the promise he had made. He studied tirelessly, motivated by the thought that every step forward was a step closer to providing for his family and giving them a better life. When he earned a full college scholarship, it wasn't just a personal victory. It was a testament to his relentless dedication to the vow he had made to his father. College brought its own challenges. Israel balanced his studies with part-time jobs, always sending money home to support his family. He didn't view these sacrifices as burdens, but as the natural extension of the promise that had become his life's compass. While his peers pursued their dreams with singular focus, Israel's dream was broader and more encompassing. It was a vision of his family thriving, free from the struggles that had defined their past. As he neared the end of his college career, Israel faced a choice that would alter the trajectory of his life. He could pursue a traditional career path, one that might provide financial stability and allow him to care for his family from a distance. Or he could embrace a calling that had always been in the back of his mind, serving his country. For Israel, the decision was clear. The Air Force offered not only the chance to honor his father's legacy, but also a way to give back to the country that had given his family opportunities they might not have found elsewhere. When Israel joined the Air Force, he brought with him the same sense of duty and responsibility that had guided him since childhood. He quickly distinguished himself as a dedicated and capable airman, earning the respect of his peers and superiors alike. But even as he built a life in the military, his family remained at the center of his thoughts. Every decision he made, every mission he undertook, was done with the knowledge that he was fulfilling the promise he had made so many years ago. In those early years of his career, Israel also began to build a family of his own. He met the woman who would become his wife, and together they started a life that was both joyful and deeply grounded in shared values. Israel's promise to his father extended naturally to his role as a husband and father, and he approached these new responsibilities with the same unwavering commitment. Life in the military wasn't without its sacrifices. Long deployments, dangerous missions, and the constant uncertainty of life in a combat zone tested Israel in ways he could never have anticipated. Yet, through it all, he remained steadfast, drawing strength from the promise that had become his anchor. That promise was more than just words. It was a code by which he lived, a constant reminder of where he had come from and what he was fighting for. As Israel rose through the ranks, he never forgot the lessons of his youth. He remained humble, grounded by the struggles of his past and the promise that had shaped his future. To his fellow airmen, he was more than a comrade. He was a source of inspiration, a living example of resilience and determination. To his family, he was a protector and provider, the embodiment of the promise he had made all those years ago. Israel del Toro's story might have remained one of quiet determination and sacrifice, if not for the fateful day in 2005 that would forever alter his life. But even as tragedy loomed on the horizon, Israel's promise to his father continued to serve as his guiding star. It would become the foundation of his resilience, a beacon that would lead him through the darkest moments of his life and beyond. The day that changed Israel del Toro's life began like so many others during his deployment in Afghanistan. As a senior master sergeant in the United States Air Force, Israel had grown accustomed to the intense environment of war. It was a world where danger lurked behind every corner, where every mission carried the potential for sacrifice, and where moments of calm were fleeting. Despite the tension that came with his role, Israel faced each day with unwavering commitment to his duty, his comrades, and the promise that had guided him since childhood. On this particular day in 2005, Israel was leading a convoy through an area notorious for insurgent activity. The terrain was rough, the roads dusty and unpredictable, and every soldier in the convoy was acutely aware of the risks. Improvised explosive devices, IEDs, had become the signature weapon of insurgents, and Israel knew that every stretch of road carried the potential for disaster. Still, his focus remained sharp. As always, he was determined to bring his team home safely. But no amount of preparation could have prevented what happened next. As Israel's Humvee rumbled down the road, it rolled over a hidden IED. The explosion was deafening, a violent burst of fire and shrapnel that engulfed the vehicle in flames. The force of the blast threw Israel from the Humvee, leaving him on the ground, surrounded by chaos. His body was ablaze, and the pain was unimaginable. Instinctively, Israel began to roll on the ground, desperately trying to extinguish the flames that consumed him. His training as a soldier kicked in, but the severity of his injuries quickly overwhelmed him. He later described how, in those agonizing moments, his life did not flash before his eyes, as people often say it does. Instead, he saw visions of the future, moments yet to come that gave him a reason to fight for survival. The first vision was of him and his wife standing in a church, exchanging vows. Marriage had always been a dream they talked about, but life had gotten in the way, and they hadn't yet been able to make it a reality. In the vision, he saw her radiant smile and felt a deep yearning to make that dream come true. The second image was of the two of them honeymooning in Greece, a place his wife had always wanted to visit. It was a promise he had made to her, a promise that now felt more important than ever. The thought of not being able to fulfill that dream for her was unbearable. The third and most powerful vision was of Israel teaching his young son how to play baseball. Israel had grown up loving the game, and it had always been his dream to pass that passion on to his child. He could see the two of them standing on a field, his son gripping a bat as Israel guided him. It was a simple, beautiful moment, but it held the weight of everything Israel had ever wanted for his life. These visions became Israel's lifeline, a spark of hope amid the overwhelming despair. He clung to them as the flames were extinguished and his comrades worked frantically to save him. Despite the horrific injuries, third-degree burns covering 80% of his body, he refused to let go of the images of the future he so desperately wanted to live. When the medics arrived, they quickly assessed the severity of Israel's condition. The prognosis was grim. He was airlifted to a medical facility where doctors fought to stabilize him. The burns were so extensive that his chances of survival were estimated at just 15%. Even if he did pull through, they warned, his life would never be the same. He would need a respirator to breathe, and the damage to his body was so severe that walking again seemed impossible. Israel's body may have been broken, but his spirit remained unyielding. As he was placed in a medically induced coma, the visions he had seen during the explosion stayed with him. For the next 3 months, as his body fought infection and endured countless surgeries, those images became his anchor. They represented the life he still had to live, the promises he still had to fulfill, and the family he refused to leave behind. During his time in the coma, Israel's comrades, doctors, and family members kept vigil by his side. His wife, who had already faced so much in their life together, became his fiercest advocate, ensuring he received the best care possible. Her strength and determination mirrored his own, a testament to the bond they shared. When Israel finally awoke, the road ahead was daunting. His body was a battlefield in itself, marked by scars and injuries that would require years of recovery. The doctors reiterated their warnings. He would need mechanical assistance to breathe. He would likely never walk again, and his military career was over. But Israel wasn't ready to accept any of that. The explosion that had nearly taken his life had also crystallized his purpose. Those visions of his future were more than just fleeting images. They were a promise to himself and to his family. He would fight, no matter how difficult the road, to make them a reality. For Israel Del Toro, survival was not just about living. It was about fulfilling the dreams that had kept him alive in the darkest moments of his life. When Israel Del Toro awoke from his 3-month coma, the world he returned to was unrecognizable. His body, once a strong and capable instrument of service, was now covered in burns so severe that 80% of his skin bore the scars of the explosion. Every movement brought pain. Every breath required a respirator. The doctor's prognosis remained grim. They doubted he would ever walk again and warned that his life would be defined by physical limitations and dependence on others. For most people, this would have been a breaking point. But Israel had already defied the odds by surviving, and he wasn't about to let his injuries dictate the rest of his life. From the moment he opened his eyes, he resolved to fight, not just for himself, but for his family and the future he had envisioned in those harrowing moments during the explosion. The journey of recovery began with small, excruciating steps. The simplest movements, lifting a hand, turning his head, sitting up, were battles unto themselves. Physical therapy sessions were grueling, often leaving Israel exhausted and in pain. His skin, fragile and healing, made even the lightest touch unbearable. Yet every small victory became a milestone, a sign that he was defying the dire predictions made by his doctors. Israel's mind, however, was his greatest ally. He drew strength from the visions that had kept him alive during the explosion. He would think of his son, imagining the day he could teach him to throw a baseball. He pictured his wife, who had been by his side through every moment of his recovery, and vowed to give her the life she deserved. These thoughts became his fuel, pushing him to endure the pain and the endless hours of therapy. One of the most difficult aspects of recovery was coming to terms with his appearance. The burns had left his face and body scarred in ways that were difficult to reconcile with the man he used to be. One day, while wheeling himself through the hospital, he caught a glimpse of his reflection in a mirror. The sight stopped him in his tracks. For a moment, he didn't recognize himself. The image staring back at him was a stark reminder of everything he had lost. His physical appearance, his military career, and the life he had known before the explosion. But it wasn't vanity that troubled Israel the most. It was fear. He worried about how his young son would see him. Would he be afraid? Would he feel ashamed of his father's scars? These questions haunted Israel, and he dreaded the moment when his son would look at him for the first time since the explosion. When that moment finally came, it was nothing like Israel had feared. His son ran to him, wrapping his small arms around his father's scarred body without hesitation. In that embrace, Israel found a kind of healing no doctor could provide. His son didn't see the scars or the burns. He saw his dad. That unconditional love reminded Israel of what truly mattered and strengthened his resolve to keep fighting. Recovery wasn't just about physical healing. It was also about reclaiming his identity. The military had been a central part of who Israel was, and the thought of never returning to active duty weighed heavily on him. The doctors had declared his career over, but Israel wasn't ready to accept that. Against all odds, he began to train, determined to prove them wrong. Walking again became his first goal. It seemed impossible at first. Every step was accompanied by pain and the risk of further injury. But Israel approached it with the same determination he had shown throughout his life. Slowly but surely, he began to take steps, defying the predictions of every medical professional who had treated him. The first time he walked unassisted was a moment of triumph, a testament to his indomitable spirit and the power of sheer will. Beyond walking, Israel aimed to re-enlist in the Air Force. This goal seemed even more improbable than his physical recovery. He faced countless hurdles, bureaucratic, medical, and physical, but he refused to give up. After years of relentless effort, Israel made history by becoming the first 100% disabled Air Force technician to re-enlist. It was a victory not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever been told they couldn't do something. Throughout his recovery, Israel's wife was his rock. She balanced caring for him with raising their young son, often taking on more than seemed humanly possible. She was there for every therapy session, every surgery, and every setback. Her strength inspired Israel, and her unwavering support reminded him of why he was fighting so hard. As Israel progressed, he also began to see his journey as something larger than himself. He realized that his story could inspire others facing their own battles, whether physical, emotional, or psychological. He started sharing his experiences, speaking to fellow service members, burn survivors, and anyone struggling to overcome adversity. His message was simple but powerful. No matter how insurmountable the odds may seem, resilience and determination can lead to triumph. Israel's recovery was not without its challenges. There were setbacks, moments of doubt, and days when the pain seemed too much to bear. But through it all, he never lost sight of the life he was fighting for. He had survived the explosion for a reason, and he was determined to make the most of every second he had been given. By the time Israel's recovery was complete, He had not only reclaimed his life, but redefined it. He had proven that the human spirit could overcome even the most devastating circumstances. His journey from the battlefield to recovery was a testament to the power of hope, the strength of family, and the enduring legacy of a promise made long ago. Israel Del Toro's recovery was not a solitary journey. At the heart of his survival and triumph was a steadfast support system, his family, who weathered the storm with him, demonstrating extraordinary strength and resilience. Central to this story was his wife, whose role in Israel's recovery was nothing short of heroic. While Israel fought for his life and worked tirelessly to reclaim it, she became his anchor, the unwavering force that held their family together through the darkest times. When Israel was injured, his wife was thrust into a reality she could never have anticipated. The severity of his burns, the uncertainty of his survival, and the grueling road to recovery ahead were enough to break even the strongest spirit. But rather than falter, she rose to the occasion, embodying the same resilience that had always defined her husband. She had already overcome significant challenges in her life, having moved to the United States from Mexico with her young son, navigating a new country, a new language, and a new life. These experiences had prepared her unknowingly for the fight of her life, standing by her husband as he battled unimaginable odds. In those early days, while Israel lay in a coma, she became his fiercest advocate. Every decision about his care, every difficult conversation with doctors rested on her shoulders. She was his voice when he couldn't speak, making critical choices about surgeries and treatments, always guided by the belief that Israel would fight his way back to her and their son. She juggled the demands of caring for their young child with the emotional and physical toll of being at Israel's side day after day. Her days were an exhausting routine. She would take their son to daycare, spend hours in the hospital with Israel, and then return home to pick up her son and care for him. Nights were her only moments of solitude, and even then, she would break down in the bathroom, crying quietly so her son wouldn't hear. But she never let her pain or exhaustion show during the day. To everyone around her, she was a warrior, holding her family together with an almost superhuman strength. Her devotion didn't go unnoticed by the medical staff. They marveled at her ability to balance so much and still remain a constant, comforting presence for Israel. She inspired everyone around her, including Israel himself. When he finally awoke from his coma, it was her face that he saw, her voice that reassured him, and her determination that reminded him of what he was fighting for. Israel would later say that she wasn't just his wife. She was his hero. As Israel's recovery progressed, their bond deepened in ways neither could have imagined. Together, they faced every challenge head-on, from the grueling physical therapy sessions to the moments of doubt and despair that inevitably arose. She was there for every milestone, cheering him on when he took his first steps, holding his hand during surgeries, and encouraging him when the pain seemed insurmountable. Her unwavering faith in him became his greatest source of strength. Israel's relationship with his son also played a pivotal role in his recovery. He had been terrified of how his son would react to his injuries. The burns had left him disfigured, and he worried that his son would be afraid of him or unable to recognize him. These fears weighed heavily on Israel, but when the moment of truth arrived, his son's reaction shattered all his doubts. The first time his son saw him, he ran straight into Israel's arms, embracing him as if nothing had changed. In that moment, Israel realized that his son didn't see the scars or the burns. He saw his father, the man who loved him unconditionally. This pure, unfiltered acceptance brought Israel a level of healing that no medical procedure could provide. It reaffirmed his determination to not just survive, but to thrive, to be the father his son deserved. Israel's wife and son weren't just his family. They were his team, his inspiration, and his reason to keep going. Every step of his recovery was a testament to their strength as a unit. While Israel worked tirelessly to reclaim his life, his wife and son stood by him, proving that true resilience is often a collective effort. Their love and support became the foundation of his success, a reminder that even in the face of unimaginable adversity, the bonds of family can provide the strength to overcome anything. As Israel regained his independence, he never forgot the sacrifices his wife had made for him. He knew that she had carried an extraordinary burden, one that most people couldn't fathom. Her ability to balance the roles of caregiver, mother, and advocate was nothing short of remarkable. In many ways, she had been his mirror, reflecting back to him the strength and courage he needed to keep going. Their journey wasn't without its struggles. There were moments of frustration, tears, and exhaustion. But through it all, they remained united, drawing strength from each other and from the love they shared for their son. Together, they rebuilt their lives, creating a new normal that was defined not by the scars of the past, but by the promise of the future. Israel's story of recovery is as much about his family's resilience as it is about his own. It's a testament to the power of love, the strength of the human spirit, and the unbreakable bonds that hold a family together in the face of overwhelming odds. His wife and son didn't just stand by him, they carried him when he couldn't carry himself, proving that even in the darkest moments, hope and strength can be found in the people we love. Israel Del Toro's journey of recovery, resilience, and triumph over unimaginable adversity culminated in a life that redefined what it means to live with purpose. By the time he looked back on all he had accomplished, his story had become more than just a tale of survival. It was a testament to the indomitable human spirit, the power of family, and the unshakable resolve to create a legacy that would inspire others. As Israel reflected on the years that followed his injury, he found himself most proud not of the medals or accolades, but of the simple, profound joys of life, being a father, a husband, and a man who had stayed true to the promises he made to those he loved. At the heart of his story was a refusal to let his disability define him. Instead, he chose to let his actions and his character tell the story of who he was. One of his proudest achievements was retiring from the Air Force on his own terms. After re-enlisting as the first 100% disabled Air Force technician, Israel proved to himself and the world that limitations exist only where we allow them. His 22 years of service became a badge of honor, not because of the rank he attained or the missions he completed, but because of the perseverance and heart it took to return after such devastating injuries. He showed that his love for his country and his commitment to his comrades outweighed every obstacle placed in his path. But Israel's accomplishments extended far beyond the military. His story resonated with people from all walks of life, and he found a new calling as a motivational speaker. Standing before audiences that ranged from corporate executives to fellow veterans to young students, he shared the lessons he had learned through his extraordinary journey. He spoke of resilience, the importance of family, and the power of finding one's purpose in the face of adversity. One of his most memorable talks took place in front of a group of burn survivors, many of whom were struggling to come to terms with their injuries. Israel understood their pain better than most, and his words carried the weight of experience. He told them that their scars did not define them, that their worth was not measured by their appearance, but by the lives they chose to lead. His message resonated deeply, offering hope to those who had felt hopeless and inspiring courage in those who had felt defeated. Israel also poured his heart into his memoir, A Patriot's Promise. Writing the book allowed him to revisit every chapter of his life, from the promise he made to his father as a boy, to the harrowing moments on the battlefield, to the incredible triumphs of his recovery. The memoir was more than just a recounting of events. It was a blueprint for resilience, a guide for anyone who had ever faced seemingly insurmountable challenges. It became a source of inspiration for readers across the world, who saw in Israel's story the possibility of overcoming their own struggles. His family remained at the center of everything he did. Watching his son grow up became one of the greatest joys of Israel's life. The vision he had seen during the explosion, teaching his son to play baseball, finally came true. The first time they stepped onto a field together, it was a moment of profound fulfillment. As he helped his son hold the bat and swing for the first time, Israel realized that he was living the future he'd fought so hard to reach. It wasn't just about baseball. It was about the promise he had made to himself to never give up, to keep fighting no matter how impossible the odds seemed. Israel's relationship with his wife deepened as they built a new life together. Their bond, forged in the fires of adversity, became a source of strength, not just for themselves, but for everyone who knew their story. Together, they proved that love and partnership could overcome even the most devastating challenges. They shared laughter, tears, and victories, always reminding each other of how far they had come and how much they had to look forward to. Israel's definition of success was simple yet profound: to be remembered as a good man, a great teammate, and an even better father. He knew that life wasn't measured by the number of accomplishments or accolades, but by the impact we have on the people around us. In every speech he gave, every conversation he had, and every moment he spent with his family, Israel embodied this philosophy. As he looked to the future, Israel remained committed to his mission of inspiring others. He continued to speak, write, and share his story, always emphasizing that resilience is not about avoiding hardship, but about finding the strength to rise above it. His disability, once seen as a limitation, had become a source of empowerment, a reminder that adversity could be transformed into an opportunity to grow and thrive. Israel del Toro's legacy is one of courage, determination, and love. It's a story of a man who faced unimaginable loss and pain, but chose to focus on the life he could still build. It's a story of a family that stood together, weathering every storm and emerging stronger on the other side. And it's a story of hope, a reminder that no matter how dark the path may seem, there is always light waiting at the end for those who are willing to fight for it.